For more than 2 decades, one book has been quietly rewiring how millions of people think about money. It's not about complex stock tips or trying to predict the market. Instead, Rich Dad Poor Dad tells a simple story about a boy with two fathers, one rich, one poor, to get at a fundamental truth. Wealth isn't really about your salary, it's about your mindset. It makes you ask a question that really sticks with you. Were you taught to work for money, or were you taught to have money work for you?
So the whole story kicks off with this simple but incredibly powerful contrast. Robert Kiyosaki's biological father, who he calls his poor dad, was this brilliant academic, actually the head of education for the state of Hawaii. And you'd think he'd be set, right? But despite a high income, he struggled with money his entire life. Then there was his other father figure, his best friend's dad, the rich dad, who was a high school dropout but went on to build an empire. So from this one unique perspective, young Robert got to see two totally different scripts about money play out in real time.
And this is where you really see the core conflict of the book. Poor Dad's whole philosophy, it came from a place of fear. The world is risky, so the goal has to be security. You know the drill. Find a safe job, climb the ladder, do everything you can to avoid financial uncertainty. But Rich Dad, he was coming from a place of empowerment. The world is full of opportunity, so the goal isn't to avoid risk, it's to understand it, to manage it, and in the end, to use it. And that single difference in thinking, well, it's the key that unlocks everything else in the book.
So this huge conflict in advice leads us straight to the central problem the book identifies. This cycle that traps almost everybody in a life of financial struggle. It's a cycle that Kiyosaki gave a famous name to, the rat race. And it's the first big idea we really need to understand.
See, the rat race isn't just about your bank account. It's an emotional state. And it's powered by these two invisible forces. First, you've got the fear of not having enough money, right? That fear pushes you to work hard. Then, the moment that paycheck hits your account, desire takes over. You start thinking about a better car, a nicer house, a new phone, and that cycle, fear, work, spend, and back to fear, is what keeps people running faster and faster just to stay in the exact same place no matter how much their salary goes up.
The book uses this perfect image to explain it. A donkey chasing a carrot on a stick. The donkey works itself to exhaustion, always thinking that reward is just one more step away, never realizing the entire game is designed to keep the carrot forever just out of reach. For most of us, a bigger paycheck is that carrot. It's the illusion of making progress, and it keeps us from ever stopping to ask, wait, should I even be running in this race to begin with?
Okay, so if the rat race is the problem, what's the way out? Well, according to Rich Dad, it all starts with financial literacy. And the single most important lesson, the absolute key that unlocks the exit door, is a completely different way of defining two simple words that we all think we already understand.
If you ask a banker or an accountant, you'll get these complicated definitions filled with jargon about depreciation and equity and all that. But Rich Dad's lesson just cuts right through all the noise to offer a definition that is so simple it's actually game-changing. An asset puts money into your pocket. That's it. It doesn't matter if you're actively working or not. It's not about what you paid for something or what you think it's worth. It is purely about its cash flow. What does this thing do for you financially every single month? And a liability, then, is just the opposite. It's anything that takes money out of your pocket. The only thing that matters is which direction the cash is moving. And this isn't just some accounting trick. It's a completely new lens to see your entire financial world through. Okay, so once you see it this way, the whole picture changes. You can see the fundamental difference in strategy. For the poor and middle class, income comes from a job, and that money flows almost straight out the door through expenses and liabilities. But the rich, they focus on buying assets first. And those assets, things like businesses, real estate, stocks, they generate the income that then pays for their lives. This creates a cycle that feeds itself, that grows on its own.
And this brings us to what is probably the most controversial claim in the entire book. Following this logic, your house, your primary residence, is not an asset. Why? Because every single month it functions as a liability. It takes money out of your pocket for the mortgage, for taxes, for insurance, for upkeep. And this one idea forces you to completely rethink what we've all been told about the American dream.
All right, so if escaping the rat race is all about acquiring assets, the next question is obvious. How do you do it? And this leads us to the third core idea from Rich Dad. You have to learn to mind your own business.
Now, there's a really critical distinction here between your profession and your business. Your profession is what you do to pay the bills, right? You might be a teacher, a doctor, a software developer. Your business, though, is your asset column. The big mistake most people make is they spend their whole lives minding someone else's business, and at the end of the day, all they have to show for it is a salary. The key is to keep your day job, but to start building your own business, your asset column, on the side.
To really hammer this point home, Kiyosaki tells his great story about asking a group of MBA students this one simple question. And of course, the obvious answer everyone gives is hamburgers. But that's not the right answer. Ray Kroc, the founder, was very clear about it. He wasn't into hamburger business. His business was real estate. The franchise sold the burgers, sure, but the corporation's real business was buying up the incredibly valuable land underneath every single restaurant. Here's the crucial lesson. The hamburgers paid for the assets. And in your own life, your job pays the bills while you build your true business, your asset column.
But here's the thing. Building that asset column isn't just about having the money to buy things. It's about having the knowledge. And this brings us to the final core idea. The whole point of a job, especially when you're young, isn't just to earn money. It's to learn skills. Rich Dad breaks down what he calls financial IQ into 4 essential pillars. You need accounting so you can read the story that numbers tell. You need investing, which is the science of making money make more money. You need marketing to understand supply and demand, and you need law to understand how to strategically use the system of taxes and corporations to your advantage. These aren't just academic subjects. They are the practical tools the wealthy use.
And this philosophy really explains the two dads' totally opposite career advice. Poor dad, the academic, always pushed for deep specialization because he believed that's what led to a higher salary. But rich dad saw that as a trap. An investor, he argued, has to be a generalist, a systems thinker. You have to understand a little bit about how all the pieces, the accounting, the marketing, the law, the investing, how they all fit together to create wealth.
So when you start to weave all these ideas together, escaping that emotional trap of the rat race, redefining your world into assets and liabilities, and focusing on working to learn the skills of an investor, the final outcome isn't just about having more money, it's about having freedom. You see, the book's principles really create a powerful new way of thinking. True wealth isn't about how much you make, it's about what you keep and how hard that money works for you when you're not looking. This really requires a fundamental shift in focus, from worrying about your salary to building up your asset column, and from relying only on a job to committing to a lifetime of financial education.
Ultimately, the book's biggest argument is that the skills you need for financial success are often the exact opposite of what we're taught in school. The traditional system rewards you for playing it safe and it punishes mistakes. But the real world of investing? It demands the opposite. It demands taking calculated risks, learning from your failures, and developing a kind of resilience, a financial guts, that you're just not going to find in a textbook. And I think that's why this book has endured for so long. It's not a step-by-step manual. It's a fundamental change in perspective. It forces you to look at your own life through its central metaphor and ask a really tough question. Are you spending your days hauling buckets, trading your limited time and energy directly for money? Or are you using that time and energy to build a pipeline, an asset that keeps delivering value long after you've stopped working on it? The answer to that one question pretty much defines your entire financial future.